Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Venus RX. It's Lacey. This is where I talk about topics that are on my mind right now. Very into the esoteric and the supernatural and astrology and a bunch of other things. But I wanted to talk about men. It's going to get a little supernatural. I wanted to talk about men, why I have my obsession with Elon Musk, and the role that men played in my life to kind of have my sort of that made me have my sort of thinking today. I was thinking about it, and a lot of people ask because, like, I seem to be very feminist now, but like some people would have considered me a tomboy as a child. I wouldn't have considered myself a tomboy. It was more like my brothers were my keepers, and I wasn't really allowed a lot of femininity until I got into maybe my teenage years, my adolescence. That's when I started wanting eyeliner and to dye my hair. And I had a lot of friend groups. I didn't have a lot of, female family members and stuff that are into femininity as much as I am. A lot of them you wouldn't catch them with makeup on, or they go to the salon, they don't do their own hair and nails and stuff like I do. But I luckily found a lot of different types of female friends throughout my years. As even in my adult years, I've been a part of many different female cliques, that fell off, fell apart, like even down to hood women. I've been around ratchets. I've been with like sporty women, all types of women I have ran with, and been close with older women, like that I have even had packs of older ladies that I've gone grocery shopping with. We would go grocery shopping like every Wednesday, and I'm like 22, but they're like 55, and I appreciate that because I was 22, like on my own, and they knew it. They already knew it, so like going grocery shopping with ladies that were like would have been around my mom age. I thank the universe for that because they definitely would point out sales and deals and like and remind me of how much I need. Do you really think you need all of that? Or you're gonna be eating that for blah 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 blah. And what do you do to keep your breads? I'm like, put it in the freezer. As a person who doesn't need a whole lot of food, they realize, I'm like, your bread does go rotten. like when you're a single individual and you try to buy it, that junk don't be lasting. I'm like, I started putting my bread in the freezer and I just take out slices like as I need it because they're right. I'm like, unless I'm planning on eating sandwiches all week. But let's get into the boys effect. And who do I want to start with? They're all interesting. My brothers. I would say I have about four brothers, but I have three biological brothers, and then one we call the white adopted brother, which is really my sister's husband. His name, let's call him Eric. I don't want to use anybody's real name. He had a very strong effect on our interest and my interest in rock and roll and heavy metal. He's very into heavy metal, and I appreciate him for joining in a mostly black family and keeping his white roots. He was not oh my goodness, a wigger. So let's start there. How my relationship with him and he was and how it was very close. They were actually married by the time I was 1 years old, but before they were married, they were together before I was born. I believe they got married somewhere within their 20s or whatnot. But my sister, what do I call her? Eric and Erica, because they're like they became one and the same. You never really see one without the other. But Erica had problems with infertility. She had tried their whole marriage. They got married in her early 20s. She didn't finally get pregnant and successfully have a baby until the age of 42. She was doing in vitro shots for years and then got pregnant out of nowhere at the age of 42. But before, she had a baby, I was like her honorary child. She like started taking care of her siblings. She would watch us and stuff and take us places. So with Eric, let's talk about his background and how he became a part of my family. This is getting tangled in. He became a part of my family after his father, the ex-war vet, came home, punched him in his face, and punched him in the chest or punched him in the face. I don't know. Apparently, he had an abusive relationship with his father and whatnot. So he came and got help from like my family. This is gonna make sense for why I have empathy for white people and some black people don't. Growing up in a rural area, I'm like I've seen a lot of white people in rough situations, and my family were Christians. You know, even my aunt, she goes to the what is it the West something, not the West Barrel. Oh no, the Baton Rouge National something something church is a large church. So my grandfather was like a priest, a minister. He had his own little church in Bogalusa, Louisiana. But then my aunt was an usher at the church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I guess as Christians, Jehovah Witness types of people, we were taught to basically help people spiritually, mentally, do what we can for people. That's why I also feel like I might carry a bit of a pushover essence. I always say that I may have fallen from heaven, but I did not lose my grace, meaning I gave up my religion and I decided to live life outside of what I was told to do. Like, and just, you know, I lost my religion like REM. That's me in the corner. Yeah, especially when I got to NYC, and I have a whole Baphomet on my arm. I do feel like that might have been an act of rebellion, but that's also very important. The Illuminati. We're gonna have to get into the brother that taught me about the Illuminati too. Yeah, and excuse me for jumping around. I like to tell you what's coming. It's going to have a supernatural aspect and why the Illuminati came after me and what that has to do with, like I said, Elon Musk and my obsession with him and, funnily enough, and my crush on him either way. As the Antichrist. But let's get into that, guys. Eric definitely. What happened? My father and my mother soothe the situation between Eric and his father and mother, and then the families we got pretty much close over time. And then he would hang out like at my house a lot. A lot of people hung out around my mother and at my house because my mom liked to tell stories. We like to bake from scratch. We played music, and my mom loved kids. That's why seven of us. My mom loved kids. She loved babies. She was not bothered by anybody kid being around. And I think that's kind of why a lot of people gravitated like to my household and whatnot. And also we emanate love and charm and all of that. Like outside of, like I said, things didn't go Ari until my mom passed away. Then it was like soul food when Big Mama died. Like we had little problems, here and there. But as their honorary child, that's definitely what he did. He played the guitar a lot, and to put me to sleep, his father eventually bought him an Impala to apologize. His father gave him a tan Impala that I used to watch sink in the ground every time we would be driving around. I always wanted to go ride and see the Impala because I was watching the ground slowly eat it. And he would always talk about his father every time we stared at that Impala. That was basically like my rocking. He played heavy metal and would drive me around to go to sleep in that Impala. They always said that as a kid. I'm like, that's probably why I was attached to that. He's like, yeah, Joey would blast his guitar. He would blast Metallica, and you would just fall asleep to that. What was it? That Enter Sandman song. That's telling my age because if I went to sleep well, you probably wouldn't know because he could listen to it earlier or younger. That I'm like, and that I feel like had some sort of play on my essence overall, because some people see me as like, especially other Negroes, they're like, yeah, I just remember being gifted keychains like at a class I took. I believe it was like financial counseling and whatnot. And they gave everybody keychains, and it was like something with the Lord on it and prayers and whatnot and crosses. But then when they got to me, they gave me a guitar and said they didn't think I was religious or anything. I was like, I'm like, that's interesting. This is before I even had tattoos. And I'm like, yo, I do secretly listen to like heavy metal. Nirvana, that's another thing that would put me to sleep. And like I said, I always like visiting that Impala. It was a gift, I guess, too. Like, and then I think about the roles my father and mother played, and him getting that. Yeah, okay. I'm laughing as I'm laughing because I'm losing my train of thought, because I'm trying to get to each guy at each brother at a time here, so we could get that out the way. Next brother I wanted to talk about is the Illuminati brother and how I got into secret knowledge and whatnot. So let's get into the Illuminati brother. I'll call him Nissan. Nissan was an interesting person. I'm not going to tell their whole life stories here, but I'll give you background on him, because he used to watch me sometimes as a child. He had to be a teenager when I was a little girl and whatnot, and my mom worked a lot. It's funny because Nissan was a dark skinned black man, and he only believed in having dark skinned babies. He said that light skinned children and mixed kids were more likely to grow up crazy. And I'm like, I think about that because he always told my sister Erica, who was with Eric, the white guy, that their baby was going to turn out crazy. They were going to confuse the kid. Like our cousins, we have cousins who mom is white, and I don't know what to do. I'm not going to even mention their names, but one of them was a stripper, and then one of them did go to jail for accidentally killing somebody for 5 years. And then I got to think about the light skinned people in my family. I'm diagnosed with bipolar disorder. My grandmother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. My light skinned or mixed father was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And my mom was dark skinned, in case you're wondering. And and what should we call it? I had a cousin with green eyes. I'm trying so hard not to say their names in this. So if I stutter, that's what it is. I had a cousin with gray eyes who was also oh my goodness, he ended up in the news as the boogeyman, y'all, because he and his girlfriend broke up with him, and then he broke into her house and he hid under her bed for 3 days. It's an article called "Don't Look Under the Bed." I'm like, yo, and I remember seeing him in this article, and then I'm like, yo, ew, look at this guy, because I was trying to search, yo, I was trying to search that Disney Channel movie, Don't Look Under the Bed. I was like, yo, y'all remember that movie with the boogie goo? I kept typing in Disney Boogeyman, Boogeyman, blah, 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 blah. And then I seen an article that said the real life Boogeyman. And I clicked on it, and it was like, it said, don't look under the bed. I was like, because I was looking for the boogeyman with the boogie goo. And I said, ew, look at this man. I was like, there's a guy that slept under a girl's bed for like 3 days after she broke up with him, and blah 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 blah. And I showed my sister, and she said, Lacey, that's her cousin. I said, you're lying, because my sister I always thought she was lying to me. Like I said, she did become a weird liar, and she did like to lie for fun. I feel like, I guess, a lot of siblings do that and whatnot. But but I went and I asked my mom, and my mom laughed and said that is him. And they're like, how you don't recognize him? He looks a lot different than his mugshot from when I remembered him. He looked like a little insane in that photo. I'm like, yo, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, that guy looks insane. I'm like, especially to be light skinned, he does not look like a friendly light skin. Like, no. Here and then, yo, oh my goodness, my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia apparently, and then she's light skinned, very fair. She's like no color at all. She doesn't have any like I have like light, like hair. She's pasty, and they say technically she's white. Or I guess she does. She came from the Creole people, French white, the French Quarter. You'll see it blends in the South where it's scary. Sometimes you cannot tell white people from black people, even their voices. In certain parts of Louisiana, that is. There's even thicker, buxom Southern white women there. But that being said, yeah, but she always said she was Creole. So I don't know. We'll give her the 1% rule, I guess. Like, yeah, my grandfather was a darker skinned black man, and he was Haitian, I believe, and he was Haitian Christian church and all of that. Um, just to give you background of it, she at some point, yo, this is how they knew she was losing her mind. We were not we. My sister was telling me this. She's like, we were sitting on the porch, and what should we call it? She was walking up the stairs and she tripped, and my cousin laughed at her, and then she got mad. She went and she got a pistol from the pistol that we kept there in case intruders and whatnot, and she put the gun on him and she said, say sorry. Oh yeah, I'm like, and everybody was scared. That's when my grandfather got her some help, and she was on pills. And they always told me that because, my recollection of my grandmother, she was on pills. My father was also on pills, like very checked out. I would have visitations with monitored visits with him, with my uncle and his wife. I don't want to say their names again, but they would take care of him until he ended up moving to the South with my other aunt, the one that's the usher in the church and whatnot. And they were zoned out, like, but they would like warn me, blah 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 blah. And they would always say, my father was on pills because he started seeing demons. He punched my grandmother in the face, like flipped out of nowhere. So I'm like, maybe. And then I'm like, I'm like, he might have a point. He just felt like, light skins were, even though he had a light skinned best friend who name rhymed with his name. It was like Nissan and Dusan. I call them Nissan and Dusan, and they had similar features too, even though one was light skinned. But I think about that. He did end up dating only like two light skinned women in his life, but one of them, he didn't do right. He admit that she went off to college and whatnot. I think he did ended up having like one light skinned child, like in his older years too. My brother Nissan was also like a heartthrob. A lot of girls liked him. So he has a lot of kids, baby mothers. I don't know how many like nieces and nephews I've really had. And I'm not gonna complain about that as somebody who got a crush on Elon Musk. He has a lot of kids too. I can't complain about that though for Nissan because a lot of women liked him. Like he had somebody. I remember he had a girl jump on the back of his car like Romy Rome, and people always talked about that. Why women always found him so attractive. Like I don't know, went crazy. I'll be short with the waves all crazy. Hit Lake Shore, girls go all crazy. I got that wrong. Either way, how this ended up in him teaching me about the Illuminati. Hold on one second. My bad. That one little sip of tea was not going to suffice. I had to go get some real water. But let's get into how my colorist brother taught me about the Illuminati on accident. Basically, he was watching me one day, and his friend Deson came over, and they wanted to smoke. I guess as a kid, as an adult, this is what I realized it to be. So he pulled out a bill, and then he gave me $1. He said, "Look at the spider web around the dollar." And he said, look at the spider web around the dollar. And then he showed me the spider leg on the dollar. He said, there's a whole spider on the back of the dollar. If you can find the spot, if you could find the spider on the back of the dollar, I'll give you $5, extra. So I went and I was searching for it. I laid down in my room or in the back room, staring at it, trying to find the full spider on the back of the dollar. I still never found it. So therefore, I went ahead and just drew a spider on the back of the dollar with a pen. And then I got some more papers out. I got some papers, some pencils and stuff. And then I started drawing all the symbolism on the back of the dollar, even tracing the words like Nubis Odor Seclorum. I started drawing triangles with eyes, and then not just triangles with eyes and hands going up, like praying to the eyes here. Like, like as a kid, I would end on what my mom would come home and be completely freaked out about, like, because it was like symbolism that seemed to be Illuminati. This is when she came, and I remember, like, she came, and I still had those pictures and those drawings. So my mom put away a lot of my childhood drawings in plastics, but my of a little sister tore them up after we got into a fight, and she hung them up without my permission. I had those junks in plastic, like all of my art collected over the years. My mom kept them, even though they were scary, and it was like praying to the eye. I have one picture, hopefully, if I can get my old phone in one day, of all of my childhood drawings as my backdrop, and me sitting there with all my childhood drawings behind me that she hung up without my permission after taking over my bedroom when I was in freaking college. I hate that bitch. Either way, every time it's her birthday, I'm like, I hope that little bitch chokes on a piece of cake. that that being said, my mom came home and she was freaked out. She said, "What are you drawing?" And then she said, "Nissan, you got her on that Illuminati ish. Why did you teach her that Illuminati stuff? Blah 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 blah." And then he's like, "What do you mean that Illuminati stuff?" And then they looked at the pictures and they were laughing and stuff. Like, why would I redraw the back of the dollar? I also went and got a spider tattoo with an eye on it, there. You know, so I still am heavy into that symbolism. I also accidentally drew the fucking freaking Masonic symbolism on my freaking arm here, but that's supposed to be a lithium molecule. ALI, lithium is what they prescribe bipolars. But people are like, are those runs, or is that a Masonic symbolism? And I only put the owl because, bipolar disorder could keep you up all night, or the racing thoughts might make you a little bit wise. And there's been a lot of times throughout my life I have freaked out my mother with some drawings here, or I don't know. Either way, I didn't. My bad, I almost lost my train of thought. But basically, I asked what the Illuminati even was, and I believe it was my brother I asked when my mother wasn't around, and then he said that no, it could probably was my mom explained it to me too. That was basically the Antichrist, and that basically that someday, if I kept drawing things like that, that they were going to come and plant a chip in my forehead or something like that. Like, you wouldn't be able to buy or sell unless you got the mark of the beast, and the mark of the beast was like a chip implanted in your forehead. So I was like, yo, that's like Neuralink. And then I was like, what if that's true? Part of me plays with the idea of him being the Antichrist in so many different ways, even down to Donald Trump name, the meaning of his name. If you look it up, it says world leader here. So like doing these things, I'm like, and doing the math, I'm like, here, I'm like, it could be possible. But that being said, I kind of took on, like, what if the devil was the bad guy, was the good guy here? And what made me think the devil was the good guy here is the fact that we weren't allowed to celebrate Halloween because it was the devil's holiday. I can remember not being able to do trick or treating and get candy. And as a kid, that ingrained it in me. I'm like, yo, if the devil lets me get candy, the devil lets me party, the devil, they always made the devil seem so cool. I'm like, I could dress up in costumes and get candy if I only believed in the devil. If my mom believed in the devil, like, that's what I had in the back of my head too. I felt like I missed out on a lot of things. Another thing my mom did was call a couple of things evil, like the him character. I remember him from Powerpuff Girls, that character with the freaking claws that came up. He came up on the screen, and my mom's like, "What kind of character is this? Like, what is this?" She's like, "That's Satan. That's Lucifer." They're like, "It gotta be, the devil here." And my mom, my mom sat there and said that, that character is the devil, and then she came to the conclusion of Satan Claus. She's like, "That's," and he's dressed like Santa Claus. He's like, my mom said, "That's the devil," and he's dressed like Santa Claus. That's Satan Claus. Like you, and then my mom, yeah, she didn't cut off Powerpuff Girls, but she became aware of it after that, and then we stopped celebrating Christmas. It's like we started going from Christian, because at first she left being Jehovah Witness until she started seeing these signs here, and then she realized in her head then that maybe the Jehovah Witnesses was right. They're like, "That's Satan Claus. We might be celebrating Saint Nicholas, might be, the devil." Again, as a kid, of course, that hit me. I'm like, yo, no more Christmas. We celebrated Valentine's Day. My mom would give me things then, and I would get things throughout the year. It's not like, I went without of it, and then, my sister Rick and Erica, they weren't giving up Christmas, and they always brought us Christmas gifts. Like, yo, yo, so bringing back that here, they did not, like, luckily that was my mom's oldest child, and she had moved out and she was married. So she would come back with Christmas gifts, or we would do things like anyway. And so I can't say I've really missed out on it. And I'm kind of not really glad that we sacrificed Christmas, but if I think about it, I might have had a good winter anyway. Like, like, because I'm like, we still did things like not go sledding, but what is that? We played in the snow. We did snow-ish, lots of different winter things that did not involve like Santa Claus or Satan Claus, as my mom called him. Like, yeah, that joke is so weird and so like funny way to grow up. I think about that, and then what was I gonna say? Dang, I forgot. I think I'm gonna probably end it there actually, and then I'll probably do a part two for the other guys in my life here. That's probably going to take a lot, even down to the Baphomet, and then still chasing that higher knowledge. But that's kind of where it started. I thought it was when I accidentally signed a Saul contract, but at some point, my mom kind of thought that maybe the Illuminati was really after me because the amount of like devil stuff that kept popping up in my media and like just around me in general. That's another thing I probably should get into, but I'm going to do it while we explore men and how they may have sculpted me in different ways and my perception on them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time for part two.